Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Chee-Tash. My name is Chris, and today we're going to continue along our journey through the book The Clean Coder by Robert C. Martin today, talking about Chapter 6, Practicing. If you guys remember last time when we discussed Chapter 5, we were talking about test-driven development, which is kind of funny because it was also the last section we went over in the book Eloquent JavaScript about testing. And in the Clean Coder, as well as in Clean Code, we've talked about TDD. So there's been multiple videos on this channel talking about test-driven development. And in the last video, we talked about, the 3 laws of TDD and the benefits of TDD, but also the potential downsides of TDD as well. And again, the 3 laws of TDD being that you're not allowed to write any production code until you write a failing unit test, and you're only allowed to write a unit test up until it fails, and then you have to write the successive code to complete that unit test and then switch back and continue writing more of the test. That's essentially what TDD is, and if you guys want to go back and take a look at that video, pretty good stuff. I've always mentioned before, I've done very little TDD in my career, but I understand the usefulness of it and how it can lead to better and cleaner code and a cleaner structure to your code. And also ensure 100% coverage of your code as it goes through a CI/CD pipeline, or if you're using something like Sonar to test out how many lines or conditions are covered in your code. So that was last time in TDD, and today we're going to talk about practicing, because if you're a professional football player, practices, they go to practice every day. So as a professional programmer, shouldn't it be expected that we practice as well? Do I practice all the time? I'm going to be honest, guys, I don't. It's something that I've tried to work on in the past, and it's tough. I mean, I guess it's not tough to find time. You can always find time. There's always trade-offs to things, but it's something that can only benefit your career. So writing to practice programming. So when you're writing code and practicing code, it's going to help whenever you start your work or you're taking on new feature work. So we've always known about practicing in software development. This is kind of what you do when you write practice programs, like if you write print statements throughout your code, and then you run your code to see whether the print statements get printed to the console so that your code is running in a certain order, or that your code is entering certain conditional checks so you can then understand how your code works. And that's kind of like practice in a way. It's kind of like practice as far as you're writing practice programs. Like, okay, this print statement is just like a little piece of practice here. But this is different from programmers practicing. So a practice program versus programmers practicing. 2 different things. And we're talking about programmers practicing their craft in this example. So a little bit of background in these first few slides, in that in showing how easy it is today to practice your craft, because you now have all the computing power in the world in just like a smartwatch, in just your cell phone. Especially on the laptop that I'm using right now, guys, there's more. My phone is faster than this laptop. Something like in my handheld. And yet we still write the same if and for loops. We still have the same, classes. We still have methods and functions. There's still comments in code, although you shouldn't write too many comments. So things have advanced rapidly, but the clay that Uncle Bob talks about in this chapter, the clay that we used to work with has not really changed much. The code is still recognizable today as if you showed it to somebody 60 years ago. They're still going to be able to understand what we do today. So what has changed is the way we work has changed. What we work with has not changed, but the way we work has changed because, now IDEs are pretty powerful, especially with AI now. You have generative AI built into IDEs. You have fast compile times. You can get a project up and running super, super quick. It used to take just so long for some of these processes, and it used to take so long to go out and seek answers to questions that you have. But now this stuff is just at your fingertips. And because there is a speed to things today which was not present in the past, you now have the opportunity to be highly productive and use that to your advantage. So you have the ability to test out your project in real time, just right away. Like in WebStorm, if you're using IntelliJ WebStorm, or I think maybe even Visual Studio Code has this too, where there's a hot reload. You make a change in your project to a working file, and then it just instantly reloads, and then you can see it on the screen. Maybe that really wasn't present before. You would have to shut down your app. You'd have to completely restart it, recompile it, and that just takes so much more time. And now we can be way more productive with that sort of manual testing. So stuff has changed a lot. But there are some things that have not changed. And for those things that have not changed, you can use different strategies to automate these things within your mind and body. So this is going to kind of relate to the other book that we looked at on this channel with Winning in Mind. And it's staggering, and it's so funny, the parallels between some of these books that don't even seem related. Because with Winning in Mind is about your mindset. It was written by a Olympian, a U.S. Olympian, and archery. And I get this wrong every time. Archery or biathlete. And it's going to tie together with this concept here, how Uncle Bob says here, your body should be reacting and your mind should be working on the strategy. And this is what it means when it means to practicing your craft, is that you get it down to a science in a way. You get it down to something that's just so natural that once your body and your mind sees a pattern, your body just reacts to it right away, and it knows exactly what to do. I see this in a code. Okay, I know I have to write a for loop. Something like that. And this ties directly into that book with Winning in Mind, where Lanny Basham, the author, splits up the mind into three parts, where you have your subconscious mind, you have the active mind, and then you have your self-image mind. But the whole point of the subconscious is that you practice things so much that they go into your subconscious, and that way you don't have to think about it once it comes time to game day. So this is what Uncle Bob also kind of means by practicing your craft and practicing coding. And there's different ways you can do this. There is such things as a coding dojo, where you meet together with people and you practice the art of coding like martial artists do. And specifically, you can do a couple things like within the coding dojo, a couple different exercises like a kata, which Uncle Bob says is a precise set of choreographed movements that simulates one side of a combat. So obviously this is very martial arts based. And it's funny because I also do jiu-jitsu too, so it's funny the parallel. But in a code kata, you are training your mind and your body how to react in a certain situation. So tying that into programming, you're training your mind to do the movements of keystrokes and solving a problem. So if you see, okay, the solution is going to involve a bubble sort, then your brain already knows, okay, bubble sort. Oh yeah, I got to type this, this, and this, and this. So you know already what you have to do as soon as your mind decides on bubble sort. In a kata, you're essentially training your brain and your fingers how to move and react once you spot the potential solution. The whole idea, again, is body reacting, mind strategizing is really the key here when it comes to practicing. Your mind recognizing the pattern and strategizing what you have to do, and then you just let the body take care of all the rest of the things that it needs to. It's kind of, there's a famous book by the San Francisco 49ers general manager. It's a professional American football team. And he wrote a book called The Score Takes Care of Itself, and how when everything from the top down of your organization is working and in sync, at the end of the day, the players and the coaches, they perform the way they do, and the score just takes care of itself and you win. And here it's a similar concept where once you recognize certain patterns in the code, you just let your fingers take care of itself, and they know exactly what to do. Okay, yep, I need a conditional check here. I need a for loop here. We're going to extract this out into its own method here. We're going to need to create a new class here. We need a new object of this class. We need these collections, etc. So that's what a kata is. It's just a little precise set of exercises. They can be super simple, or maybe even they could be a little more complicated. So a kata is one way to enhance your practice or to do practice when it comes to software development. A wasa is another way to do it, and it's essentially a two-man kata, and it plays off of this theme of drilling and martial arts, and we do this in jiu-jitsu too, where you have one person as the aggressor and one person as the defender, and then you switch roles. So you have one person maybe coming in to try to pass your guard, and then as a defender, you have to react and try to then sweep them based on what the aggressor gives you. And it's not that the aggressor is coming at you with 100% energy, but they're giving you a quote-unquote look. They're giving you a certain specific set of parameters, right? Maybe they're coming in high, maybe they're coming in tall with their hands down, and you need to react in a certain way. Not that you're going like full live, like it's, the Pan Ams, but you then train your brain to then see the patterns and then react to it in a certain way to score points off that particular situation. And in programming, it's a similar concept where you have a two-man team where one person is going to write a unit test to solve a particular problem. And the other person is going to make the test pass, and in making it pass, they're going to move ahead in trying to solve whatever sort of coding problem that you're trying to solve. So one person writes the test, the other makes a pass, and then vice versa. You're essentially doing a two-man TDD team here. If you guys remember the laws of TDD that I talked about just at the beginning of this video, and again, there's other videos on the channel that talk about TDD. So instead of having one person write, hey, I'm going to write the unit test, go back, write the production code, go back, write the unit test. It's a relay team. You switch back and forth. Cool thing about this is that the test writer kind of dictates the path that you take when solving the said coding problem that you're trying to solve. And in that way, it makes it fun, and it keeps the other person guessing, and it makes it that much more challenging because, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So the test writer can choose, how are we going to solve this problem? Well, maybe I write a test. We're going to use a class here. Or maybe you write a test where the first thing you do, hey, instead of writing up a new class, we're just going to use array lists and sets to solve this problem. Multiple different ways to do it. So it's up to the test writer. Next, and hopefully you guys can see that at the very end there. The next one, so we talked about Kata, Wasa, then there's Randori, which is now you're adding more people to the pie, and you get a group of people together to solve a problem. And in a Randori, it's kind of like a free-form combat. So more people in the mix, you're going to have more different diversities of how to solve the problem. And this is essentially a bigger relay team, and it builds off this Wasa concept where Now you're faced with a coding problem. You have one person start, and that one person writes a test, makes a pass, and then passes it on to the next person. And then the next person, they write the test to make the new code pass, and then they write the next test, and then they pass it on to the next person, and et cetera, et cetera. It's essentially just a bigger, more than two-person Wasa is what a Randori is. And again, you're working as a team to solve the problem where you're solving or you're writing the production code of the last person's unit test to just barely make it pass, and then you're writing a little bit more of the unit test. Or I guess you could also do it where one person writes a test, the next person makes the test completely pass, next person writes a test, and so on and so forth. So it's just, think of it as a track team. You're on a 4-man relay, or however many people, more than 2 people. Because if it was 2-person, we would call it a Wasa. But I wouldn't get hung up on the words here, Randori, Wasa, Kata. It's, again, at the end of the day, you're training your body to recognize patterns. So then when you see them at work, you know exactly what you have to do. Another thing as far as practice, and this is something Uncle Bob outlines, and this will be the last slide, guys, is that the importance of broadening your experience in your field, because it helps you to get prepared for new things or challenges that might come and sweep the industry. If all you do at work is, you're not even well versed in cloud development, so then, well, what are you going to do when a new cloud computing technology comes out? Like, say, I don't know. Let's not even say you're not well versed in it. Maybe all you do work in is Google Cloud, aka me. And then next thing you know, a new product comes out that's way better than cloud, and people are switching to it. Well, now you need to up your skill set and learn that new cloud technology. And Uncle Bob outlines how important this is in your career. And there's a couple different ways that you can help broaden your experience. You can work on open source projects, which basically means you contribute to an open source piece of code or repository. And he says, especially if you do it in a language or framework you are not familiar with, it can potentially help you, again, in just gaining new skills. If you do Java, maybe try to contribute to an open source project that is Ruby. If you work in JS, maybe try to contribute to an open source project that's in Java, etc. You can practice ethics, so having good practice ethics, so essentially practicing outside of regular working hours, because Uncle Bob says that employers don't have to pay you for your practice time. They pay you to perform. And I think that's kind of similar. I mean, in the professional sports world, I don't think NFL teams pay you. They pay you a game check. Like, if I'm talking about the NFL, National Football League here in America, you get a game check every week. You don't get a practice check. Right. Although I think there are incentives for off-season practice and strength and conditioning. We won't go there, but you get a game check. So you should be practicing in your off hours to prepare you for the game, for your job, so that you perform well, so that you can get paid more. And at the end of the day, all professionals practice in anything, and medical, and like sports is a great example. I'm sure in business they practice, and it shouldn't be any different here in software development, because we are professionals. So as professionals, we need to practice. And again, you do it so you can get paid, and paid well. And with that, that's going to do it this week for the Clean Coder. We'll be back next time, maybe with a I'm just switching back and forth, guys, between Eloquent JavaScript and the Clean Coder. Clean Coder, we're about like halfway through. Eloquent JavaScript, where I'm kind of taking a little bit more of my time with that one. So thank you guys very much for listening. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll be back next time. Again, don't forget, always remember to check out the podcast. And thank you very much for listening. My name is Chris. This has been Chee-Tash. Take care, everybody.